The world is celebrating a 14-day ceasefire, but they are cheering at the funeral. You've seen the headlines. Peace in our time. I see a $200 billion war budget and a closed Strait of Hormuz. We aren't watching the end of a conflict, we are watching the reload. While you're breathing a sigh of relief, the fuse is already burning in Lebanon. 2 weeks? That's not a truce, that's a countdown to a global blackout. Don't look at the signatures, look at the oil prices. The real war is just getting started. While the mainstream media is busy populating your feed with images of handshakes and historic breakthroughs, let's look at the numbers, because numbers don't have a political agenda. We are currently in day 3 of a 2-week ceasefire mediated by Pakistan and China. Markets reacted like a caffeinated teenager. Brent crude dipped 13% and the Dow Jones had its best session in a year. But if you think this is the end, you haven't been paying attention to the Pentagon's shopping list. Let's recap how we got to this pause. On February 28, 2026, the world woke up to Operation Epic Fury and Operation Roaring Lion. It wasn't just a surgical strike, it was a decapitation. 900 sorties in 12 hours. The US and Israel didn't just hit military bases, they erased the Iranian leadership's hierarchy. Ali Khamenei, the man who ruled for nearly 4 decades, was confirmed dead alongside his inner circle. And while diplomats were expressing concern, the price of a gallon of gas in the US cleared $4 for the first time in years. Why? Because Iran did exactly what it always threatened to do. It turned the Strait of Hormuz into a parking lot. Now we have a new player on the board, Mojtaba Khamenei, the son, the radical, the man who hasn't even shown his face in public yet, communicating only through written messages read by state TV anchors. He says he doesn't seek war, while simultaneously telling his people to stay in the streets and keep their hands on the trigger. It's a classic move. Talk peace to buy time while the IRGC reloads. And here is the kicker, the part the evening news forgot to mention. While Trump posts on Truth Social about long-term peace, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is heading to Congress with a request for over $200 billion in additional war funding. You don't ask for 200 yards of cash for a 2-week vacation. That is the price tag for a long-term, high-intensity engagement. The US isn't planning to pack up. They are planning to replenish the stockpiles exhausted during those first 40 days of hell. The most cynical part? This ceasefire is as double-sided as a coin with 2 tails. As of April 8th, while the ink was still wet on the Iran agreement, Israel launched Operation Eternal Darkness in Lebanon. Over 300 dead in Beirut in a single day. Netanyahu's office was very clear. The ceasefire with Iran does not mean a ceasefire with Hezbollah. So, while Tehran celebrates a pause, its main proxy is being hammered into the Stone Age. Does this sound like peace to you? Or does it sound like a tactical timeout to see who blinks first when the oil reserves hit empty? If you want to know how worthless this ceasefire is, look at the 2 things that haven't moved: Iran's centrifuges and Israel's fighter jets. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the nuclear question. The US 15-point peace plan demands a total dismantling of Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Trump's red line is clear: zero enrichment on Iranian soil. But check the fine print of Iran's response. Mojtaba Khamenei's 10-point counterproposal essentially says, we'll stop shooting for 14 days, but the uranium stays. Most of Iran's highly enriched uranium is buried deep in sites like Fordow and Natanz, which, despite 900 strikes in February, are reportedly still operational or at least intact enough to remain a threat. We are in a diplomatic stalemate where neither side is willing to blink, while the clock on those 14 days is ticking like a time bomb. And then there's April 8th, Black Wednesday. While the UN was busy drafting congratulatory tweets about the ceasefire, the Israeli Air Force was busy fueling up. In a massive display of force dubbed Operation Eternal Darkness, over 50 Israeli jets hammered central Beirut and southern Lebanon. We're talking 100 strikes in 10 minutes. The casualty list is grim. Over 300 dead, hospitals flooded, and a sixth of Lebanon's population now displaced. Netanyahu's message to the world was a masterclass in geopolitical sarcasm. The ceasefire with Iran is for Iran. Lebanon is a different folder. By striking Hezbollah, Iran's most powerful proxy, right as the peace was announced, Israel effectively lit a match in a room full of gasoline. Iran's reaction? Predictable. The Supreme National Security Council immediately paused the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Think about that for a second. The entire economic foundation of this ceasefire, the flow of 20% of the world's oil, is now on hold because of the strikes in Lebanon. Around 2,000 ships, including massive oil tankers and even cruise liners, are currently stranded in the Persian Gulf, waiting to see if they'll be allowed to pass or if they'll become target practice for Iranian drones. The world is watching a ceasefire where the missiles are still flying, the oil is still stuck, and the nuclear labs are still humming. This isn't diplomacy. It's a strategic pause for both sides to sharpen their knives. As the Iranian Foreign Ministry put it, our hands are on the trigger. They aren't talking about a handshake. They are talking about the next 900 strikes. While diplomats are busy arguing over nuclear centrifuges, the rest of the world is staring at a much more terrifying number: $100 per barrel. You might not care about the geopolitics of the Persian Gulf, but you will definitely care when you see your grocery bill next month. According to the IMF and the World Bank, the global economy is currently on life support. The 13% drop in Brent crude after the ceasefire announcement wasn't a recovery, it was a desperate gasp for air. Let's look at the Hormuz tax. For the past 5 weeks, the Strait of Hormuz, the carotid artery of global energy, has been under a de facto blockade. Japan, which imports 93% of its oil through this 33-kilometer-wide gap, is looking at a total economic collapse within 8 months if the pause doesn't become permanent. India and China are in the same boat, with 40 to 60% of their energy security hanging by a thread. This isn't just about gas prices, it's about fertilizers. The cost of agricultural inputs has spiked by 75% since late February. In simple terms, when energy prices go up, food prices follow. The FAO Food Price Index is already showing its biggest jump in years. You aren't just paying for the war with your taxes, you're paying for it at the checkout counter. The IMF's managing director, Kristalina Georgieva, put it bluntly. Even in the most hopeful scenario, global growth is being downgraded. Every 10% increase in energy prices is expected to push global inflation up by another 0.5%. We are looking at a 3.5% inflation surge in the second quarter of 2026 alone. So, what is this 14-day ceasefire, really? It's an economic emergency brake. The world's biggest players, China and the US, realized that if the strait stays closed for another month, the global financial system won't just bend, it will snap. China nudged Iran and Trump paused the strikes because both sides realized they were about to burn down the house they both live in. But here is the final, bitter truth. The ceasefire expires in less than 336 hours. The $200 billion Pentagon request tells you everything you need to know about what happens on hour 337. The US isn't buying peace, they are buying logistics. They are restocking the B-2 bombers and the Tomahawk batteries while the world briefly celebrates. The question isn't whether the ceasefire will hold. The question is, what are you going to do when the 2 weeks are up, the strait closes again, and the epic fury returns with a vengeance? Because in this game, 14 days isn't a solution, it's just a stay of execution. We are currently living in a 14-day window that the history books will either call a miracle of diplomacy or the greatest deception of the 21st century. While you watch the stock market tick back up and hear the world leaders congratulate themselves in Islamabad, don't lose sight of the reality on the ground. The Strait of Hormuz is a ghost town, the Lebanese border is a furnace, and $200 billion is being quietly moved into war chests. Peace doesn't cost $200 billion. Peace doesn't look like Operation Eternal Darkness while the ink on a treaty is still wet. The question isn't whether this ceasefire is real. The question is, what are we going to do when these 336 hours run out? Because when the clock hits zero, the world we knew might not be there to pick up the pieces. History is being written in the next 2 weeks. Keep your eyes open, because the truth isn't in the headlines, it's in the silence before the next strike.